When I was a teenager, I was placed with a foster family in a quiet rural farmhouse. They seemed kind at first, but the twisted horrors they were hiding were beyond anything I could have imagined. They were far darker than my worst nightmare. I spent my teen years in foster care. I won't go into too much detail about it, so let's just say my early years were tragic. I wasn't a bad kid, wasn't troubled, just unlucky. I was excited to find out that I'd be living on a farm. I thought it would be perfect because of my love for animals and nature. I'm a kind, quiet, honest person, and a simple, peaceful life was all I dreamt about. When we pulled up to the house, it looked older than I expected. 2 stories, white paint peeling in places, with a porch that creaked under its own weight. But it was quiet, peaceful, a kind of quiet that made me think, maybe, just maybe I'd be safe there. The couple who greeted me at the door were named Harold and Margaret. I guess they were probably in their late 50s. They were neatly dressed and polite, but a little stiff if I'm being honest. Margaret gave me a smile that kind of felt practiced, almost like it had been waiting on her face all day. Harold didn't smile much at all, but his handshake was firm. They called me sweetheart and son within the first 10 minutes. I remember thinking it was a bit strange, but given my circumstance, I really didn't hate it. Oh, and I should mention now, Harold was a big man, and by big I mean tall and solid. Probably 6'7" and 290 pounds. His main attire was worn denim overalls or a jumpsuit, which made sense given the farm work. They welcomed me inside and we sat down at the kitchen table. The place was certainly dated, but seemed clean enough. I noticed right away they were religious. Crucifix and oil paintings of the big man himself hung on almost every wall, and Margaret wore a wooden rosary around her neck. They let me know of their rules almost immediately. We always eat together, and we say grace before every meal. We never swear, and we certainly never use the Lord's name in vain. The last rule? Never go into the basement, Margaret said. That's Harold's workshop and place of worship. It's sacred. Harold looked up, trying to break the tension. It's my man cave. Margaret forced a playful eye roll before saying, one more thing. The Lord sees all. I'll admit, the rules felt strange, foreign. I was used to fending for myself, not praying before meals or having a set bedtime. And the religion, that was going to take some getting used to. But honestly, as long as I was safe, I didn't care. However, it was only the first night when I started to realize that safety was probably not the main feature of this place. Something that stood out right off the bat was the calm. Almost a creepy calm. Nobody in the house spoke, and it was like everyone knew their role and just did it. Margaret and Harold seemed cold, not only to me, but to each other. And only about a week in, things started to happen. I had trouble sleeping that night. The mattress was stiff, the sheets smelled like dust and mildew. The floorboards in this house were old, warped, with thin cracks between them, just enough for a faint line of light to bleed through from whatever naked bulb they had down in the basement. I knew Harold worked late down there sometimes. I could hear the occasional scrape of metal, soft grunts, and the clinking of tools. But that night I heard something I hadn't before. It was a voice, soft and childlike. I laid still as to not creak the mattress so I could hear the voice more clear. I didn't want to die. I sat up, heart immediately in my throat.
Why did you do that? You still could have helped me.
The voice wasn't coming from a TV. It wasn't on the radio. It was right beneath me, just below the floor, in the basement. I leaned in, barely breathing, trying to make out the words.
It hurts. It still hurts.
Then a sudden crash, like a chair being thrown, followed by Harold's voice booming from below. "That's enough!" And then silence. I froze, didn't dare to move, didn't even blink. I had never heard him raise his voice before. He wasn't just loud and annoyed, he sounded truly violent, almost desperate. Then I heard the familiar sound of Harold pulling the cord on the light bulb as the basement went dark. Who in the hell was that voice I heard? Was it my imagination? Maybe he and Margaret had an argument. Maybe that voice was her and it was just distorted through the floorboards, I thought. I tried to brush it off, but something in my gut sank. Something felt wrong, to say the least. The next morning, I waited until Harold was out in the field before I brought it up. I figured if anyone would listen, it would be Margaret. "I heard something last night," I said carefully, standing just outside of the kitchen. From the basement, it sounded like a kid, whispering. Margaret stopped stirring her tea and turned around slowly. Her eyes didn't look surprised. They looked angry. "You what?" she asked. "I don't know," I stammered. I just thought maybe someone was down there, or..." She cut me off and took a step toward me. "Only the wicked hear voices," she said, low and firm. "Only those who've invited sin into their hearts. Is that what you're doing? Inviting evil in?" I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say. That's when Harold walked in, covered in dirt and sweat, wiping his hands with a rag. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Margaret turned to him with a practiced smile. "Just telling our boy here about the importance of prayer," she said, her voice sweet again, "especially in times like these." Harold nodded, suspicious but quiet. He set his tools down and grabbed a glass of water. Margaret turned back to me, her smile gone. "Go to your room," she said, "and don't come out unless one of us tells you to. You've got some praying to do." I didn't argue, I just went. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours, just silence and questions. What the hell had I heard last night? Why was Margaret so quick to shut me down? And what did she mean, only sinners hear voices? And what was she referring to when she said prayer is especially important in times like these? Not long after, though, I noticed something near the far corner of the room. One of the floorboards looked slightly lifted, the edge slightly scratched or worn maybe. I knelt down and slid my fingers along the board. It wiggled slightly, and with a little effort, I pried it up. Beneath it was a small cavity, and inside was a notebook with a worn leather cover and torn edges. I could tell it was old. The handwriting was messy, almost seemed rushed. The journal belonged to someone named Tyler. He wrote about arriving on the farm, about the prayers, the rules, the strict routines. But then it got worse. He wrote about hearing voices from the basement, whispers, cries, and the way Margaret would say things like, "You must have brought that evil in with you." I turned the page. Tyler's handwriting was uneven here, like he was shaking when he wrote it. It said, "Caleb and I came here together. We were placed the same week." I paused. Oh, I didn't know they had other foster kids in the past. That makes sense, I guess. And then I continued reading. He was always more trusting than me, always trying to please them, especially Harold. He did everything he asked. The next part, though, made my skin crawl. Today I saw them from the window. Caleb was on the roof of the barn helping Harold patch a missing board. I remember waving at him, and he waved back. Then Harold climbed up behind him, but there was something so strange. Harold's body seemed stiff. He seemed to move slow, disconnected or disassociated, not quite with it. The freakiest thing, though, was the mask he was wearing. It almost looked like it was made of paper mache, like Harold made it himself. From where I was, it looked like it had been painted black around the eyes and a small slit for the mouth. Anyway, he just stood there for a second, looking at him. Caleb didn't even notice. And then he pushed him. He didn't trip, he didn't fall. Harold shoved him, watched him go over the edge. My hands were sweating and I turned the page carefully. He said it was an accident, told the sheriff Caleb lost his footing. They believed him. No one questioned a thing, not even when I told them what I saw. I should have done more. I should have run, but I was scared. And now I hear Caleb at night. I think he's still here. I closed the journal and sat on the bed. I was hungry and I'd been cooped up all day, but now the last thing I wanted to do was leave the room. I didn't want Harold or Margaret to come to my bedroom door. At around 12:30 a.m., a faint light flicked on coming from outside and illuminated my room. It was the barn light. Harold must have been in there. I heard some faint crashing in there and what sounded like Harold yelling again. Stomach in my throat, I cracked the window slightly, trying to make out his words. "I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to hurt them," he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm a man of God, a loving servant of the Lord." His voice cracked with desperation and pleading. Then, suddenly, he stopped and everything went quiet. I crouched down in front of the window, getting a bit more cover to make sure he couldn't see me if he walked out. Then, he did exactly that. He stepped out into view through the open barn door. Somehow, he seemed taller and even more imposing in the moonlight. He squared his shoulders like he was about to walk into battle, but it was his face that made my heart stop. That mask. It was exactly how Tyler described it in the journal. Cheap, handmade, like some horrible craft project. Paper mache, maybe. Rough, peeling, thick black paint smeared around the eye holes and a single slit for the mouth. And he wasn't moving, just standing there, completely still. Too still, like a statue. His arms hung loose at his sides, his head slightly tilted, like he was listening, maybe. Or thinking. I stayed crouched just beneath the window, heart in my throat, praying he hadn't seen me. But then, movement. Another figure darted into view from the house, barefoot across the dirt. It was Margaret. Her long nightgown billowed behind her as she ran full speed toward the barn, not even bothering with a coat or shoes. "Harold, no!" she yelled, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence like glass. She stopped a few feet from him, chest heaving. He didn't turn, didn't flinch, just stood there, a frozen, towering, masked figure. "You can't do this again," she shouted, eyes wide. We promised we'd never let this happen again." Still, nothing. "Snap out of it," she screamed. "This isn't you anymore." Her voice cracked, part fury, part desperation. "We love Luke, remember?" Her voice softened, trembling now. "He's not like the others. He's good. He doesn't deserve this." And then, with one slow mechanical movement, Harold lifted his arm and shoved her, hard. She went down instantly, crumpling into the dirt like a rag doll. There was no rage in his emotion, no hesitation either. It was effortless, robotic. Like he wasn't even angry, just empty. He didn't even look at her. He stepped past her body without a glance and turned his gaze toward the house. Toward me. I froze. Even from across the yard, even through the dark, I could feel his stare like a weight pressing through the glass. That awful, grinning mask tilted slightly like he was locking onto his target. Then he started walking. Slow, steady, silent. One foot in front of the other, his long frame slicing through the fog with horrifying purpose. He was coming to the house, and he wasn't coming to talk. I don't even remember how I got out of the room. I think my body moved before my brain could catch up. One moment, Harold was coming up the porch steps, slow, heavy footsteps on the old wood. The next, I was bolting down the hall, heart jackhammering in my chest. I didn't think, I just ran, down the stairs, out the back door into the night. I heard the screen door slam behind me as I tore across the yard and into the black sea of corn that surrounded the farmhouse like a living wall. The stalks closed in around me, tall and endless. I kept running, branches slapping my face, dirt tearing at my bare feet. Somewhere behind me I could hear crashing, movement, the sound of following. But I didn't look back. I ran until my legs gave out, until my lungs burned, until everything went dark. When I came to, the sun was just beginning to rise. I was laying face up in the middle of a harvested patch of field, the sky tinted orange, and someone was standing over me. "Hey kid, are you alright?" It was a man in overalls, probably in his late 60s, weathered face, dirt under his nails, a shotgun slung over his shoulder. I sat up, dizzy, barely able to speak. "The farmhouse," I choked. "Harold, the voices, he was gonna kill me." The man's face darkened instantly. "Jesus," he muttered. "Not again." I blinked. "What?" I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Kids go in, don't come out, always the same house. He glanced towards the tree line. I tried to warn people, but they called me crazy. I stayed with that farmer until the sheriff came. The story exploded, but what they found sent shockwaves through the community. That night, Margaret had burned the farmhouse to the ground in an attempt to destroy evidence before she finally broke when the cops showed up. She told investigators everything, that Harold wasn't always Harold, that something inside him would flip, like a switch, and when it did, he became cold, robotic, and violent. "We thought prayer would fix it," she said in her interrogation. "We thought if we loved the next one enough, it would be different, but it never was." They had been fostering children for over a decade. Records showed 4 placements and 0 adoptions. 3 missing children, 1 ruled an accident, the others quietly dismissed, swept under the rug as runaways. In the basement, investigators found journals, handwritten notes from Harold addressed to God. They said things like, "Please Lord, deliver me from this darkness. I don't want to hurt them." After the events, I was placed with an amazing family, but the wounds from my past are still with me, and probably always will be. I still wonder if the voice I heard coming from the basement was someone, one of the other kids, trying to warn me from beyond. I wonder if that same voice still torments Harold in prison. Hey everyone, really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps so much, and I really appreciate all the support. Alright, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.